The spaceport on the edge of the colony world was loud and full of smoke. Workers shouted as machines carried broken metal from one end to another. Engines roared as old ships lifted from the landing pads. The air smelled of oil, dust, and fire. Daniel Cross walked through the market slowly, his boots making a dull sound on the iron floor. He had been a soldier once, but now he wanted a different life. The wars had ended for him. His body was tired, his heart even more. He wanted peace, and maybe a little business carrying cargo between quiet worlds. To do that, he needed a ship, and not just any ship. He needed one he could afford, one that was cheap enough to buy, but strong enough to fly. He had saved every coin from small jobs, and today he was ready to spend it. He came to the rows of ships for sale, some shiny and new, most broken and rusted. Traders shouted at him, offering the best deals and perfect models, but Daniel ignored them. He wanted to see the ships for himself. At the very end of the row, away from the light, stood an old cargo ship. Its gray body was covered in scratches. One of its engines looked half dead. Its nameplate was burned away. No one seemed interested in it. It looked like a ghost among giants. Daniel felt something when he saw it. A strange pull. He stopped, his eyes fixed on the ship. An old man appeared from behind a metal crate. His back was bent, his voice cracked when he spoke. "Looking for a ship, traveler?" he asked, smiling with missing teeth. Daniel nodded, pointing at the old vessel. "That one, how much?" The old man's smile faded, his eyes shifted, almost as if he was hiding something. "That ship is not for everyone," he said slowly. "It has history, strange history." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "History does not scare me, I just need something that flies." The old man leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper. There are things inside that ship you may not understand, noises in the dark, doors that open when no one touches them. Many have walked inside, few stayed long." Daniel crossed his arms, his soldier's eyes hard. "I am not afraid of noises, tell me the price." The old man sighed, then gave him a number so low Daniel blinked in surprise. It was almost too cheap, cheaper than all the other ships. "Why sell it so cheap?" Daniel asked, suspicious. "Because I want it gone," the old man said quickly, his voice sharp. "Take it, but remember my words. Don't go looking too deep into its belly, and if you hear crying, ignore it." Daniel frowned. Crying. The old man did not answer. He only pressed the ownership chip into Daniel's hand and walked away, shaking his head. Daniel stared at the chip, then back at the ship. He told himself the man was just trying to scare him. Many traders use tricks like that. He took a deep breath and walked up the ramp. Inside, the air was colder. The lights flickered, dust floated in the beams. The walls were scratched, as if someone or something had tried to carve messages into the metal. Daniel touched the wall. It felt warm, almost like skin. He walked through the corridors, his boots echoing. The ship creaked as if it was breathing. He checked the cockpit. The controls were old but still working. He sat in the pilot's chair, imagining flying through the stars. For the first time in a long while, he felt hope. Still, there was something strange. The silence inside the ship was heavy, as if the air itself was watching him. That night, after finishing a quick inspection, Daniel set up a small bedroll near the cockpit. He wanted to rest before making plans for repair. Outside the window, the colony lights flickered like stars. As he closed his eyes, he heard it, a sound so soft he thought it was a dream, a child's cry, faint and broken. Echoing from deep inside the ship, his eyes snapped open. He sat up quickly, hand reaching for the old sidearm he still carried. The sound came again, like a whisper in the dark. He stood, his heartbeat fast. The cry was real. Someone or something was in the ship with him. Daniel moved slowly into the corridor, every step heavy with tension. The lights flickered again, and the sound of crying grew clearer. The old man's warning came back to his mind. "If you hear crying, ignore it." Daniel swallowed hard, but he was not the kind of man who ignored cries for help, soldier or not. He could not leave it. He followed the sound, his hand tight on his weapon. The ship seemed to guide him, doors sliding open as he walked, air colder the deeper he went. At the end of the hall, he reached a maintenance hatch. The crying was louder now, echoing like it was right behind the door. Daniel took a breath, leaned down, and slowly pulled the hatch open. Two glowing eyes stared back at him from the darkness. The glowing eyes in the darkness froze Daniel where he stood, his hand still gripping the hatch. For a long moment, he did not breathe. The sound of the child's cry filled the narrow corridor, soft but real. Then the eyes blinked, and the sound stopped. Silence filled the air like a heavy blanket. Daniel's soldier instincts told him to close the hatch and forget what he saw. But his heart pushed him forward. He whispered, "Who's there?" His voice steady but low. The eyes vanished back into the shadows. A small shuffle echoed, like tiny feet moving quickly away. Daniel pulled the hatch wider and shined his small wrist light inside. The beam cut through the dark, revealing a cramped tunnel filled with pipes, wires, and dust. There was no one, only a faint mark on the floor, like something small had been crawling there. He frowned, closing the hatch slowly. He walked back to the cockpit, telling himself it was just his imagination, maybe rats, maybe some strange echo, but deep down he knew those eyes were not a trick. The next morning, Daniel woke early, determined to check the ship more carefully. He walked from room to room, inspecting the walls, the storage holds, the maintenance bays. Everywhere he went, he found small signs. In one corner, he found a half-eaten food ration, but it wasn't human food. The texture looked alien, slimy, and glowing faintly. In another spot, he found a round object, like a toy, made of crystal, that hummed softly when touched. The more he found, the more his heart raced. Someone was living here, hiding here. The strange thing was the ship itself. Doors opened before he touched them. Lights flickered only when he entered certain rooms. It was as if the vessel was guiding him, showing him pieces of a puzzle. In the engineering bay, he placed his hand on a control panel. It pulsed warmly, almost like it was alive. Daniel pulled back quickly, whispering to himself, "This ship is different." He continued his search until he reached the cargo hold, the biggest and darkest room. His boots echoed on the metal floor as he stepped inside. The smell of oil and dust was mixed with something else, something sweeter, almost floral. He pointed his wrist light into the corners, and his breath caught. Small drawings covered one wall, scratched into the metal. They were not human drawings. They showed stars, strange symbols, and shapes of creatures with long arms and large eyes. He stepped closer, running his fingers over the carvings. They were fresh, not old. Someone had made them recently. A noise broke the silence, a soft thump, like something being dropped. Daniel spun around, light cutting across the cargo hold, and for a brief second he saw movement, small and fast, disappearing behind a crate. "Come out," Daniel said firmly, his voice echoing. "I know you're here. I'm not going to hurt you." Silence, then a soft shuffle, then nothing. Daniel's soldier training told him this was dangerous, but another part of him, the human part, told him this was something else, not an enemy, maybe a child, maybe someone lost. He moved slowly toward the crates, his heart beating faster, every step filled with tension. His light touched the side of a crate, and suddenly, a shadow darted across, climbing into a ventilation shaft. The sound of small hands scraping against metal echoed. Daniel raised his light, and once again, glowing eyes looked back at him for only a second, then vanished deeper into the tunnels. He stood frozen, whispering to himself, "Not human." The old man's warning echoed in his mind again. Noises in the dark, doors that open. Don't trust the silence. Daniel exhaled slowly, rubbing his forehead. This was more than just a ship. This was a secret, and now he was part of it. That night, he tried to rest, but the ship refused to let him. Doors creaked open on their own. Faint footsteps echoed above the ceiling panels. Once he heard what sounded like laughter, light and innocent, the laughter of a child. Daniel sat up, gripping his sidearm again, whispering into the darkness, "Who are you?" But no answer came, only silence. The next morning, Daniel decided to try something different. Instead of searching, he sat down in the middle of the cargo hold, placing a bottle of water and a packet of human food on the floor. He waited. Hours passed, his eyes fixed on the shadows. The ship was silent now, too silent. Finally, a movement. A small hand reached out from behind a crate. Trembling, the hand was thin, pale, with 3 long fingers. It grabbed the water quickly and vanished. Daniel's chest tightened, his eyes wide. He had seen it clearly now. It was not human. It was alien. The sound of small footsteps ran through the corridors again, and Daniel whispered, "So it's true. Someone is hiding here." He stood slowly, deciding he had to know more. He had to see them fully, no matter what the risk. Later, as he walked back to the cockpit, the lights above him flickered. Once more, and in the reflection of the glass, he thought he saw a shape behind him, small, thin, and watching him with those glowing eyes. When he turned, the corridor was empty, but Daniel knew he was not alone in this ship, not anymore. Daniel had seen many strange things during his years as a soldier, but nothing prepared him for the moment when the shadows finally revealed the truth. It happened late. The ship was quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against his ears. Daniel sat in the cockpit, his hand resting near the controls, pretending to work, but his mind was focused on the sound he had begun to recognize, the faint shuffle of small feet moving through the corridors. He turned his head slowly, and there she was, not a shadow this time, not a trick of the lights. A figure stood at the far end of the hall, tall, thin, and holding something close to her chest. Her eyes glowed a soft blue, and her skin shimmered like polished stone. Daniel froze. His instincts screamed danger. His training told him to raise his weapon, but something inside him stopped him, because in her arms was a child, the same small figure he had seen before, the one who laughed in the night and cried in the silence. The child clung to her tightly, its small glowing eyes staring back at him with fear. The mother stepped forward, her movements slow, careful, not threatening. She raised one hand, palm open, a gesture of peace. Daniel's voice was low. "You're real," he whispered, the words sounding strange in the heavy air. She did not speak, not in words he could understand, but her eyes carried meaning, a plea. She wanted him to know she meant no harm. The child shifted in her arms, letting out a soft whimper. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had heard that sound before. It was the same cry that haunted him since he first stepped aboard this ship. Slowly, Daniel lowered his weapon, his fingers loose, his voice steady but softer now. "I won't hurt you." The alien mother tilted her head as if studying him, then she stepped closer into the light. Daniel saw her clearly now. Her skin was a pale silver with faint patterns that glowed like veins of light. Her long arms held the child protectively. The child itself was smaller, fragile, with the same glowing eyes but softer features. They looked weak, tired, as if they had been hiding for too long. Daniel's heart battled with his mind. Humans were at war with aliens like her. Soldiers were trained to capture, never to protect. But here, in this silent ship, with no one watching, he saw not enemies, only a mother and her child. He took a careful step forward, his voice low. "How long have you been here?" But the words meant nothing to her. She only looked at him with eyes full of exhaustion and fear. Then she pointed at the child, then at the ship's walls, then at herself. The message was broken but clear enough. They had been here for some time, hiding, surviving. Daniel glanced around the ship, remembering the food scraps, the toys, the drawings on the walls, the laughter in the dark. It all made sense now. They were not ghosts, they were survivors. His chest grew heavy. The old man's words came back to him. "If you hear crying, ignore it." But how could anyone ignore this, a mother protecting her child? The alien mother seemed to sense his conflict. She lowered her head slightly, almost like a bow, her arms tightening around the child. Daniel realized she was not asking for mercy for herself, but for her child. The silence broke suddenly. A sharp pounding echoed through the ship, heavy fists striking against the outer hull. Daniel's blood ran cold. Someone was at the door. A metallic voice followed, harsh and commanding. "Open up, Inspection Patrol." Daniel's heart raced. He looked back at the alien mother, her eyes wide with fear. She held the child tighter. The child whimpered softly. Another bang shook the walls. "This is your final warning. Open the ship or we force entry." Daniel's mind spun. He had two choices. He could hand them over and be free of this burden, or he could protect them and become an outlaw, hunted by his own kind. The mother stepped closer, her free hand gripping his arm gently, her eyes begging, not with words, but with pure emotion. Daniel had fought wars for flags, for orders, for people who never knew his name. But now he stood before something different, something fragile, something innocent. And his heart made the choice his mind was too slow to make. He whispered, "Hide," pointing to the maintenance hatch nearby. She understood, quickly moving with her child into the shadows, disappearing like mist into the lower decks. Daniel closed the hatch behind them just as the pounding grew louder. The door hissed open, and 3 patrol officers marched inside, armored and armed, their eyes scanning the corridors. One of them glared at Daniel. "We've had reports of illegal life forms, stowaways. You seen anything?" Daniel forced a calm look on his face, leaning casually against the wall. "Illegal life forms," he repeated slowly. "This ship barely runs. I only bought it yesterday. You think something could survive in here?" The officer narrowed his eyes, scanning the dusty floor, shining a light across the walls. Daniel's heart pounded. Every second felt like an hour. He prayed the mother and child stayed silent. The second officer checked the cargo hold. The third examined the engineering bay. Daniel's hand rested near his weapon, ready to fight if needed. Finally, the leader grunted. "Ship's clean. Just another scrap buyer wasting money." He shoved Daniel lightly. "Keep your head low, stranger. If you see anything unusual, you report it." With that, they turned and left, their heavy boots for aiding into silence. The ship's door sealed shut again. Daniel exhaled sharply, his body tense, sweat on his brow. He walked back to the hatch and slowly opened it. The alien mother stepped out, the child in her arms, both of them trembling. Daniel met her eyes, his voice rough but certain. "You're safe, for now." But deep inside, he knew nothing about this was safe, not for them and not for him. The silence after the patrol left was heavier than the sound of their boots. Daniel leaned against the wall, breathing slowly, his ears still ringing from the banging on the ship's door. His eyes moved to the hatch where the alien mother and her child were hiding. He opened it carefully, and she stepped out, the child clinging tightly to her neck, both of them shaking, their glowing eyes wide with fear. Daniel whispered, "They're gone." But his voice was rough, heavy with tension. The mother looked at him for a long time, then bowed her head slightly, a gesture of thanks. For the first time since the war, Daniel felt something stir inside him, not anger, not duty, but responsibility. He sat down on a crate, his hand brushing his tired face. "What am I doing?" he muttered. He had fought aliens before, seen them as enemies, and now here they were, fragile, desperate, and hiding inside his ship. The child peeked at him, curious, their small glowing eyes blinking. Daniel tried to offer a small smile, though it felt strange on his face. He had not smiled in years. The mother moved closer, careful and slow. She placed her hand on her chest, then pointed at him, then at the child. It was her way of trying to speak without words. Daniel nodded slowly. "You're asking if I will help," he said softly. She did not answer with sounds, but her eyes did. They begged him, pleaded with him. He leaned forward, his voice low. "Do you understand what this means? If I'm caught, if they find you here, they will throw me in chains. Maybe what?" The mother bowed her head. She understood the risk, but she had no choice. She was not asking him to save her. She was asking him to save the child. Daniel looked at the little one again, its thin fingers gripping its mother's shoulder. The way it stared at him with both fear and hope, it cut through every wall he had built inside his heart. His soldier's mind screamed at him to report them, to do the logical thing, to survive, but his human heart whispered something louder, "Protect them." The sound of sirens broke the silence, sharp and metallic, echoing from outside the ship. Daniel froze, running to the cockpit window. Red lights flashed across the colony docks. Orbit control had locked down the area. A voice boomed from the speakers outside. "Ship registration 934A. Prepare for full inspection. Failure to comply will result in seizure." Daniel cursed under his breath, his hands flying over the old controls. He turned to the mother. "You need to hide now." She moved quickly, slipping back into the hatch with her child. The door closed just as Daniel powered up the engines. The old ship groaned, lights flickered, alarms screamed. Security drones swarmed outside, their sharp wings slicing through the air. They locked onto his vessel, preparing weapons. Daniel gritted his teeth, pulling the control levers hard. "Come on, old girl, don't fail me now." The ship roared to life, breaking free from the dock clamps. Sparks flew as metal tore against metal. Patrols shouted orders over the comms. "Stop that vessel! Disable it now!" Lasers fired, slicing through the dark. Daniel spun the ship wildly, engines screaming, the vessel shaking like it might tear apart. His soldier training took over, his hands moving fast, eyes sharp. The mother and child stayed hidden, holding each other close as the ship twisted through the chaos. Daniel's jaw tightened, his heart pounding. He whispered to himself, "I chose this. I won't let them take you." One drone flew close, firing again. Daniel yanked the ship upward. The old vessel groaned but responded, its systems flashing warnings. Then, something strange happened. The ship reacted on its own. Doors sealed automatically, shields flared, engines pushed harder than Daniel thought possible. For a moment, it was as if the ship wanted to escape as much as he did. They broke through the blockade. The stars stretched into lines as the vessel jumped into hyperspace. Daniel collapsed back into the seat, his breath rough, sweat dripping down his face. Silence returned, only the hum of the engines remained. The hatch opened slowly. The alien mother stepped out, her child still in her arms. She looked at him with eyes filled with something new, not only fear, but trust. Daniel stared back, shaking his head. "You don't understand. I just made myself an enemy of my own people." The mother lowered her gaze, then touched his shoulder gently, a silent promise. She understood his sacrifice. Daniel leaned back, staring into the endless stars outside. The choice was made. There was no turning back. He had thrown away his safety for theirs. His life as a soldier had been about following orders, but this was different. This was his choice, his first true choice, and for reasons he could not explain, it felt right. But he also knew the chase had only just begun. The stars stretched around the old ship like silver rivers. The jump through hyperspace was rough. The vessel shook and rattled as if it was not built to run anymore. Daniel gripped the controls tightly, his jaw clenched, sweat rolling down his forehead. He had escaped the colony, but only barely, and he knew the patrol would not give up. They would chase him across systems, not because of him, but because of what he carried inside his ship. Behind him, the hatch opened slowly. The alien mother stepped out. The Chi, LD holding onto her tightly. Their glowing eyes watched him with both fear and trust. Daniel turned his head, his voice sharp. "Stay in the back, it's safer there." But the mother shook her head gently. She walked closer, her long fingers brushing across the ship's wall. The metal under her touch glowed faintly, almost like the vessel was alive. Daniel frowned, watching as the old systems flickered, lights turning brighter where her hand passed. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice careful. She looked at him, then at the child, then back at the walls. She whispered a sound, not in his language, but it carried meaning, a word of connection. The ship responded, engines humming stronger, stabilizers shifting. Daniel's eyes widened. "You're bonded to this ship, aren't you?" he whispered. The mother gave no clear answer, but her eyes said everything. This vessel was more than metal, more than machines. It was part of her people, part of her story. Before Daniel could ask more, alarms screamed. Sharp red lights flashed across the cockpit. Sensors lit up. Enemy signatures were following. Drones had locked onto their trail. Daniel cursed under his breath, slamming his hands against the controls. "They're faster than I thought," he muttered. The mother stepped closer, placing one hand on his shoulder, her other hand holding the child. She pointed at the radar screen, then at the stars, her eyes glowing brighter. She wanted him to trust her. Daniel nodded slowly. "All right, old girl, let's see what you can do," he whispered to the ship. The chase began. Drones cut through hyperspace like knives, their weapons charging. Daniel twisted the ship hard to the left, alarms blaring as the hull groaned. Laser fire streaked past the windows. He dove into an asteroid field, sharp rocks spinning in the void. The old vessel shook violently. Daniel's teeth clenched, his hand as steady on the controls. One wrong move and they would be crushed. The drones followed, weaving through the deadly rocks with cold precision. But the strange thing was, the ship seemed to move with a mind of its own, turning faster, dodging tighter, almost as if it was alive. Daniel realized the mother's hand was still on the wall, her eyes closed, her breathing steady. The ship was listening to her. One asteroid spun close. Daniel jerked the ship down, scraping across the rock, sparks flying, but the vessel held together. The child let out a soft cry, hiding its face against the mother's shoulder. Daniel shouted over the alarms, "Hold on back there." The drones closed in, weapons firing again. Explosions lit the dark sky. Daniel pushed the engines harder. The old vessel screamed but surged forward. Then something unexpected happened. The ship's panels glowed. Systems he had never touched came alive. A strange blue energy spread across the hull, forming a shield. Lasers slammed into it but bounced away. Daniel's eyes widened. "What in the stars is this ship?" he muttered. The mother opened her eyes, looking at him with silent intensity. She pointed at the child, then at the ship, then at the endless stars outside. Daniel understood. The child was connected too. The child was the key. The ship's engines roared with new strength, brighter than before. The vessel shot out of the asteroid field like lightning. The drones tried to follow, but the energy shield flared, sending a shockwave that shattered them into pieces. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of the strange living ship. Daniel leaned back, gasping, his hands trembling slightly. He had flown through countless battles, but nothing felt like this. Nothing felt this alive. The mother lowered herself into a seat, the child still holding on to her, their glowing eyes soft now, no longer filled with fear, but something else. Trust. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands. "Dees," his voice low. "You're not just stowaways, are you, this ship? It belongs to you, doesn't it?" The mother nodded slowly, her head bowed. She tapped the ship's wall gently, then placed her hand over the child's heart. Daniel understood enough. The ship was tied to them. It was their lifeboat, their last hope, maybe their last home. He exhaled, staring at the endless void outside. "And now it's mine too," he whispered. For the first time since he bought the old vessel, Daniel no longer saw it as broken metal. He saw it as something alive, something dangerous, and something precious. But even as silence returned, he knew it would not last, because the patrol would not stop. They would send more ships, stronger ships, and every choice he made would put him deeper on the path of no return. Still, Daniel felt a strange calm. He looked at the mother, at the child, and at the stars, and he whispered to himself, "If humanity wants to hunt you, then they'll have to hunt me too." The silence after the battle felt unreal. Daniel sat in the pilot's chair, his hands resting on the old controls, his eyes locked on the endless stars. The hum of the engines was steady now, almost peaceful. Behind him, the alien mother held her child close, both of them tired. The child's glowing eyes were half closed, fighting sleep. Daniel watched them for a moment, something heavy pressing on his chest. He turned back to the controls, whispering to himself, "What are you hiding, old girl?" The ship had done things no machine should do. It moved like it had instincts. It shielded itself with energy Daniel had never seen before. It felt alive, and the mother's touch seemed to guide it. Daniel stood, walking to the center console, running his fingers across the panels. They pulsed faintly under his skin, warm and alive. He pulled his hand back quickly, shaking his head. This isn't just a ship, is it? The mother stepped forward, her glowing eyes calm but serious. She placed her hand on the wall. The panels lit brighter. Symbols appeared across the glass, not human symbols, alien script, fluid and beautiful. Daniel frowned. I don't understand, he muttered. The mother looked at the child, then at Daniel, then touched the console again. The symbols shifted, forming images instead of words. Daniel's breath caught. The images showed a world, green skies and silver oceans, towers that looked alive, filled with light. Then the images changed, warships filling the skies, explosions tearing through cities, creatures fleeing in panic. Daniel's stomach tightened. He understood without words this was her world, and it had been destroyed. The mother lowered her head, her long arms tightening around the child. Daniel felt his chest ache. He had fought wars, but he had never seen loss painted like this, pure and raw. The images shifted again, showing this ship, not broken and rusted, but alive and strong, glowing veins running across its hull, moving like it was breathing. Daniel whispered, "It's alive," his voice almost breaking. The mother nodded slowly, then touched the child's chest, her fingers glowing faintly. The child lifted a small hand and touched the console. The ship reacted instantly, systems flaring brighter, the hum of the engines rising in strength. Daniel's eyes widened. "The child, it's the key," he muttered. The mother's gaze met his, heavy with meaning. Her eyes told him the truth. This ship was not only alive, it was bonded to her people. It responded to their touch, their energy. Without them, it was only broken metal. With them, it was a living being. Daniel rubbed his face with his hand, whispering, "No wonder the patrols are hunting you. No wonder they want this ship." The mother tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder, a question in her gaze. Daniel sighed. "What now?" he asked himself more than her. "Do I run forever? Do I fight them? What choice do I have?" Before she could answer, the sensors beeped, sharp and urgent. Daniel rushed back to the console. Enemy signals flashed across the screen. More patrol ships, bigger this time. They had tracked him through hyperspace. Daniel's jaw tightened. "They won't stop," he muttered. The mother moved closer, her eyes glowing brighter. She touched the ship again. This time her voice whispered a strange sound. The panels responded, more systems lit up, hidden compartments unlocking, new controls unfolding. Daniel's eyes widened. The ship revealed weapons, not human weapons, but glowing cannons pulsing with alien energy. He whispered, "You've been hiding this all along." The mother pointed at him, then at the controls, then at the child. She wanted him to fight, but she also wanted him to trust the ship. Daniel sat down, his hands firm on the levers, his heart pounding. "All right, old girl, let's see what you're really made of." The patrol ships closed in, weapons hot. Their voices barked through the comms. "Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Daniel grinned bitterly. "Yeah, not happening," he muttered, pulling the controls. The living ship roared, its glowing cannons firing beams of blue light. Patrol ships exploded in flashes of fire, but more kept coming. The battle turned fierce, lasers cutting through the void, the old vessel twisting like a predator, faster than any human ship, guided by the mother's energy and the child's touch. Daniel felt the ship moving with him, reacting before he even pulled the levers. It was like flying with a partner, alive and aware. Still, the patrols were many, and damage grew. Alarms screamed. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Daniel shouted over the chaos. "Hold together, Jude. Say hold together." The child pressed its small hand harder against the console, its eyes glowing brighter. The ship answered, shields flaring stronger, engines burning hotter. With one final surge, the ship released a wave of blue energy, blinding and powerful. It tore through the enemy ships like a storm, leaving silence in its wake. Daniel gasped for breath, his hands trembling, his eyes wide. "That was impossible," he whispered. The mother looked at him, then at the child, then back at him again, her gaze heavy. She wanted him to understand. This was not the end, it was only the beginning. Daniel leaned back in the chair, the stars calm again outside, his heart heavy, his mind racing. He whispered to himself, "I bought a ship, and instead I found a living weapon, a mother and a child, and now I've made enemies of my own people." The mother lowered her head, the child resting against her shoulder, their glowing eyes closing in exhaustion. Daniel stared at the endless stars, his voice quiet but certain. "If this ship has secrets, I'll uncover them. If they want to hunt you, they'll have to hunt me too." The hum of the living vessel filled the silence, steady, alive, almost like it agreed. The living ship drifted through the dark sea of stars, the hum of its engine steady. Daniel sat in the pilot's chair, his eyes fixed on the console, his mind heavy with the weight of choices already made. He had turned his back on the colony, defied the patrol, and now he carried something far greater than cargo. He carried an alien mother, her fragile child, and a ship that breathed like it was alive. Behind him, the mother sat quietly, the child asleep in her arms, both of them glowing faintly in the dim light. Daniel glanced back, his chest tightening. He had seen many things in war, but never something so fragile, never something so worth protecting. The sensors beeped suddenly, sharp and cold. Daniel leaned forward quickly. Enemy signatures appeared on the screen. Not drones this time, but full warships, human vessels, armed and waiting. A voice crackled through the comms, cold and familiar. "Daniel Cross, surrender immediately. You are charged with treason, harboring alien fugitives, and theft of restricted technology. Power down your ship and prepare for capture." Daniel's jaw clenched. He gripped the controls tightly, his voice low. "I knew it would come to this." The mother stood, her eyes glowing brighter. She placed one hand on the ship's wall. The panels pulsed in answer. The child stirred, opening its glowing eyes, sensing the danger outside. Daniel turned to her, his voice sharp. "If we fight them, we'll never stop running. If I surrender, they'll take you, and I know what happens after that." The mother's gaze was heavy, her silence stronger than words. She already knew what choice he had to make. The warships closed in, their weapons charging. Daniel's heart pounded. He thought of his past, the battles he fought, the orders he followed without question, and the faces he could not forget. He thought of how empty his life had been since leaving the army, how he searched for meaning, and how he found it now, not in glory, not in medals, but in protecting a mother and child who should have been enemies. He whispered to himself, "This is what it means to be human." The comms barked again. "Final warning, surrender or be destroyed." Daniel's hands flew across the controls, his voice steady now. "Not today," he muttered. The battle exploded into light. Warships fired streams of fire. The living ship twisted and turned faster than any human vessel, its glowing shields flaring, its cannons firing bursts of blue energy. The mother and child stood behind him, their energy flowing into the ship, the panels alive with light. The vessel moved as if it knew the battle, as if it had instincts older than war itself. One warship exploded, then another. Daniel shouted over the alarms, "Hold on, we can do this!" But the enemy was many, more than the living ship could handle. Blasts tore across the hull. Alarms screamed. Daniel gritted his teeth. The ship shook violently. The child cried out, pressing its tiny hand against the console. Light burst across the ship, brighter than before. Daniel shielded his eyes. The vessel roared. A wave of energy ripped outward, blinding and powerful. Warships staggered, systems crashing. Daniel gasped. "What did you just do?" he whispered. The mother's eyes glowed. She looked at the child, then at Daniel. She spoke in her soft alien tongue, a single word he did not understand, but the meaning filled the air. Hope. The warships regrouped, but Daniel felt it. The living ship was changing, responding, becoming something new, its panels reshaped, its engines burning hotter, the child's small hands guiding it like a heart guiding blood. The battle turned again. Daniel flew with precision, the ship anticipating every move. Together, they fought as one, human and alien, pilot and vessel, mother and child. One by one, the warships fell, exploding into fire until the silence of space returned. Daniel collapsed back into the chair, his breath heavy, his heart racing. He looked at the mother and child, their eyes glowing faintly, tired but alive. He whispered, "We won. But this isn't the end." The mother stepped closer, placing her hand on his arm, her gaze calm. She pointed at the stars, at the endless horizon, her eyes full of meaning. Daniel nodded slowly. He understood. This was bigger than survival, bigger than running. This was about a future where humanity had to choose, fear or compassion, war or unity, destruction or hope. He leaned forward, his voice steady. "If they call me a traitor, so be it. If they hunt me, let them. I'll protect you no matter what it costs." The child reached out, placing its small hand on Daniel's hand. The ship glowed brighter, lights spreading across every panel. The stars outside seemed to shimmer, as if answering. Daniel stared at the endless dark, a small smile on his face for the first time in years. "Let them chase us. We'll show them what humanity really is," he whispered. The living ship roared, engines burning brighter. It surged into the unknown, carrying a soldier who found his purpose, a mother who lost her world, and a child who carried the key to something greater. The stars lit up around them, as if a new story had begun.